Well, ladies and gentlemen, as it would seem, President Trump is not happy with Senator Lindsey Graham right now. In fact, it would seem as if Lindsey Graham is intentionally sabotaging the America First movement. Now, as many of you know, as far as Republicans go, Lindsey Graham is one of the strongest supporters of Ukraine that we have on our side of the aisle. In fact, just a couple of days ago, Lindsey Graham and Democratic Senator Blumenthal chartered a negotiation trip to Ukraine during which they spent over $800,000 taxpayer dollars on travel expenses. And of course, as many of you know, in accordance with the Logan Act, Lindsey Graham isn't supposed to be holding negotiations with foreign leaders without President Trump's explicit permission. And folks, let's just say that it doesn't seem like Lindsey Graham's Ukrainian vacation was sanctioned by President Trump. You see, just 2 days ago, as I'm sure many of you have heard, Ukraine launched a massive drone attack against a Russian airfield, destroying over $7 billion worth of Russia's strategic bomber planes. And so, folks, here's the massive problem with this. This colossal Ukrainian drone attack took place just 1 day after Lindsey Graham landed in Ukraine, and as Ukraine themselves have confirmed, President Trump wasn't given notice that this attack would be taking place. So to be very clear, as President Trump is actively working night and day to work out a deal between Ukraine and Russia in order to bring peace to Eastern Europe, Lindsey Graham is seemingly having secret meetings with the Ukrainians. Right as they're launching massive attacks deep inside of Russian territory without giving any notice whatsoever to President Trump. Then, after Ukraine's massive attack had concluded, Lindsey Graham came out and publicly gave his endorsement to the attack, directly contradicting President Trump's America First policy, which prioritizes de-escalation and diplomatic negotiations. And so, folks, with all of that being said, I have a feeling you're going to want to see this next thing I have to show you, but first, I do want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, check this out.
Then the White House has to condemn this immediately and pull all support and tell Lindsey Graham, come home. Or we're going to put you under arrest when you come home. You're stirring it up. Lindsey Graham's over there saying, hey, forget Trump. I got the House and the Senate. We're gonna pass him. You're going to see something in a couple of days. Remember that? He's stirring it up over there. He's telling me they got backing. If they did not give us a heads up on this, all full stop, no minerals deal, walk away from all of it. They're irresponsible. And they're dragging us into a kinetic third world war. As we said, we're getting dragged in now. Or the deep state is driving us in there. Either of these are not good. Tulsi Gabbard's got to let us know. Did anyone in Intel at all have anything to do with this? Did anybody have a heads up? Did anybody? And if not, who the hell's running the Ukraine desk? Who's running the Russia desk? Same thing with Ratcliffe. This is why Cash and Bongino and Pam Bondi, you got to clear out the deep state. This is a ticking time bomb. And you see what they're going to get us into. Because now inexorably we're being drawn into this. If we didn't know about it, the president, to me, has got to condemn it and got to say we're not going to give any more support because these people cannot be trusted. You're supposed to be in Turkey today talking peace, not 3,000 miles into Russia blowing up their strategic bombers.
Now, folks, not only is Steve Bannon absolutely right about all of this, but you know what? Let's have a little bit of a reminder here. Let's not all forget that still to this day, right this very moment, there are numerous anti-American actors inside of our federal government that are actively pushing to get the United States involved in even more foreign wars, namely in Eastern Europe and in the Middle East. In fact, take a look at this.
People are not awake of what is happening throughout the world and how we're being sucked in, and supposedly by somebody we support, like Zelensky, to know that he never gave the White House a heads up. He never asked permission to do this. He would do really a brilliant but a deep strike into part of their nuclear, essentially taking out our B-52s, which these old Russian planes are. It's outrageous. And Lindsey Graham all weekends over there stirring the pot. We can't have people over there telling the Ukrainians that we're going to back more. What we're trying to do is calm this down. What President Trump is trying to say is like, look, let's get to a ceasefire. Let's put our weapons down. Let's talk peace and prosperity. We don't support the economic deal, but President Trump is saying it's part he needs it as a central part
Right.
of a peace plan. But we can't have Lindsey Graham, and particularly Zelensky, leading us into a third world war with a deep strike into Russia. And Putin came back today and said, hey, we're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to see who's accountable in Ukraine and beyond. And that was a message to the United States.
And so, folks, here's the reality. Lindsey Graham's actions in Ukraine perfectly align with the deep state's ongoing efforts to perpetuate the war in Ukraine for as long as possible, in direct opposition to President Trump's America First agenda. Right now, President Trump's aspiration of bringing about peace is being actively undermined by Washington, D.C. establishment figures like Lindsey Graham. In fact, check this out. Here's a little fun fact. Since January of 2023, 2.5 years ago, Lindsey Graham has personally taken 6 taxpayer-funded trips to Ukraine, whereas he's only taken 2 trips back to South Carolina, the state that he was elected to represent. Based on his flight logs, you'd just assume that he's actually some ambassador from Ukraine. But nope, believe it or not, he's a sitting U.S. senator. And so that's why Steve Bannon said earlier in that clip that if Lindsey Graham doesn't stop meddling in Ukraine, President Trump should just have him arrested. The reality is, Lindsey Graham has been drastically overstepping his boundaries. But you know what? Speaking of Steve Bannon, take a look at this.
Something's very, very, very wrong here. Either, number one, if the White House didn't have a heads up, that to me should be, you should condemn this attack today. You should say we're pulling all support today. And you should tell Lindsey Graham, get on a plane here, dude, and get back and stop stirring the pot. Okay, and you should put a notice to the guys in the Senate. We're already $1 trillion. The big beautiful bill. And you're talking a lot of smack over the Senate. We're going to cut. We're going to cut. We're going to cut. Do not add any money, because this is what Lindsey Graham's saying. The House and the Senate are going to add big dollars for Ukraine. Not happening. We should, if we did not know about it, and let's take that as his face. If they didn't give us a heads up on it, that's dragging us in it. They did a strike 3,000 miles into Russia. As we said last week when Mert said, oh, we got, the ability to hit deep, we got sign of America supports that. There was no verification of that. I don't believe. I never saw any official verification of that.
And now, folks, I absolutely love that he brought up our national debt and President Trump's big, beautiful budget bill. And the reason why is this. Can you folks guess which Republican senator has been dragging his feet, claiming that he's undecided, refusing to commit to voting for President Trump's budget bill? That's right, Senator Lindsey Graham. When it comes to funneling hundreds of billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars to Ukraine, Lindsey Graham is totally on board. But when President Trump needs a budget to actually make America great again, well, Lindsey Graham isn't really that interested. As many of you know, a huge portion of President Trump's budget bill is aimed at securing our borders in order to permanently solve our illegal alien problem. But very interestingly, Lindsey Graham seems more interested in securing Ukraine's borders than our own borders. That seems a little bit weird, a little bit anti-American, don't you think? And so, ladies and gentlemen, right now, rumor has it that President Trump is actually considering trying to primary Lindsey Graham when he's up for re-election in 2026, kicking him out of the Senate and replacing him with someone who's actually willing to prioritize the needs of Americans living here in America. Because, folks, as I like to say, that is what it's going to take to finally put America first. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, I do want to say real quick that we officially have a Morse News Twitter page as well as a Morse News Facebook page. So if you use either of those platforms, please go down below and drop a follow in order to get breaking news updates that relate to everything we talk about here in the YouTube videos. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there, and like I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.